Welcome along to the Punter on Sports Tonight, the show that likes to bring you all the value across the sporting markets. On tonight's show, we'll be taking a look forward to that thorny issue of match fixing in football. Plus, we'll be taking a look at the Premier League market, the Championship market, and of course, tackling the big boxing bouts this weekend. I'm pleased to say that Nigel Seeley is alongside me in the studio. Nigel, how's your week been so far?
Yeah, not too bad, Dan. I mean, apart from the disappointment of the big game of the week, the Porter down against the Macedonian third team, the game I spoke about Monday, under 2.5 goals, and the goalkeeper performing a Superman act to let me lose the money on that. But apart from that, I'm a bit disappointed with the rain. This is what it's doing. I mean, we need some good racing. We had Newmarket today, which is quite a good car tomorrow. We just need a good 3 or 4 days to enjoy some good sport. And I think this is the problem that punters are finding. I'll just keep going on about it, but the weather's playing havoc, not only with the sporting calendar, but also with my bank balance. And we need to sort it out quick.
No doubt about that. We are going to talk football a little bit later on in the show. We're going to start, though, with match fixing because there isn't too many things going on, as you mentioned. So the newspapers have decided to run 1 or 2 stories, mainly involving a Southampton player from the late 90s, Klaus Lundekvam, talking about games that he says were fixed, or at least parts of games that were fixed. I mean, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, let's be honest with you. There is a certain elements in sport, and certainly in betting where things are up to skullduggery, because when there's money involved, there's certain people who do things that aren't necessarily what you expect them to do. But on this occasion, the figures don't make sense. I mean, they don't make any sense to me. I mean, they're talking about the late 1990s here when this allegedly happened. I worked for a leading online bookmaker, then I worked for a spread betting company in IG Index, and I worked for a fixed odd company in Stan James. Now, both of those 2 companies were at the forefront in offering in-running prices on these novelty markets, throw-ons, corners, etc. Nobody at that time bet on who will get the first throw-on. No one. Not here, not in Asia, nowhere. The market never existed. So whoever laid these bets, I don't know who they were because it wasn't in the English marketplace. The second thing is the corners, where you could bet on how many over and under a corner, or you could bet on who will get the first corner. Now, who will get the first corner will be 5 to 6. You could get 100 quid on it. No more. £200 if you're at a push, if you're a losing account. £600 question marks were being asked why this bloke having £600. And to kick off, it was 5 to 6 each or 2 as well. Again, I remember a Super Bowl game where someone rang up and had £1,200 on one of the teams to kick off first, win the toss at the kick-off 3 hours before. They suspended the market because they thought someone knew something about it. There is no way you can get thousands of pounds on this market. Now, even if you get £200 or £300 and you win the first time, okay, down to luck. If you do it the second time, you're restricted to £100. If you do it the third time, your account is closed, you will not get a bet on. And what I think here is, I think it's a journalist doing a very poor job on not knowing the facts, not knowing the industry, not knowing effectively what he's writing about, not asking people in the betting industry. It wouldn't happen because he'll give his story away, but not knowing what his limitations are. Now, I'm not to say that there was maybe games where syndicates, where they get players to provide team news and benefit from that. That's probably true. I could probably think that's the case for that. But on this occasion, the figures just don't stack up. I mean, I tried to make the case for the betting industry 2 days ago with 2 journalists. I can name 10, 12 journalists who've rung or placed bets on behalf of managers to get the next manager job. Is there anything wrong with that?
I guess it's insider trading, isn't it? And
well,
if that was the City, then it's frowned upon, isn't it?
But you compare it to horse racing. Every major bookmaker, the big 3 bookmakers in this country, have ins at yards. They know the horses that aren't progressing, the 2-year-olds which are expected to do well, the 2-year-olds aren't expected to do well. That is what bookmaking is about, forming an opinion and trying it. So they have a psychological edge. You know, you could look at loads of different things here. But on this occasion, maybe they've done it as a group of lads for a bit of a laugh, one-off. They probably got 1,000 quid. Once they've divvied it all up between the players, they've got £100 each. Second time, they're thinking, is it worth it? You know, should it have happened in the first place? No. But you're talking about FIFA getting involved, UEFA getting involved. This is a story run by the biggest newspaper in this country, which is just a false storm, and there's no evidence to it. There's no proof in it. The markets that they quoted didn't exist, and the levels they're talking about are impossible to get on.
Just on a broader theme of match fixing, I mean, I completely agree with you, and people will say, well, you know, we're in the betting industry, this is a betting show, so we're bound to say that. But on a wider theme, when you look at, say, for example, some of the early Europa League games, some games that are played out in the Balkans, in Eastern Europe, and maybe some lower leagues in those sort of nations, can you see maybe an issue there? I mean, it wouldn't necessarily affect UK bookmakers, UK punters that much, but could you see an issue maybe in that particular part of the world in games such as that?
Possibly, yeah, I take your point. There will be games there, but there's unusual betting patterns. But each game, a bookmaker will know how much they will roughly see on that market. So, for example, if you've got a game like that, you would probably see on the betting exchange and industry as a whole, maybe 15, 20 grand. If you're seeing 15, 20 grand on one team in the first 20 minutes, you know something's up. You cut the price immediately. If you shorten them by dramatically, if the money keeps coming, you know something is really up, then you suspend betting on it. There is nobody out, and then that account is marked. And then what the bookmakers do is they pass on those names to the governing bodies and say, this is what we think is suspicious patterns on this game. That wasn't the case in 1990s in these games, but those games you never bet on. This is a global market now, betting. The UK bookmakers don't just talk about the English market. It's massive in Europe. So they have to open up every single thing. So it's very competitive. You have to offer every prices on every single event. But what these people are severely lacking, how much intelligence and how much knowledge of their clients bookmakers have in this one. They know exactly who's betting what.
Speaking of bookmakers, let's hear from Alan Alger of Blue Square. Alan, I mean, you must see, as Nigel is explaining, certain bets, certain accounts, certain games, and obviously you change the odds accordingly. How rife or otherwise do you think match fixing is?
I mean, match fixing as a whole, if you're talking about individual events in games, as Nigel says, very, very difficult to actually make money by doing this. I mean, we're industry insiders. I mean, if someone was to say to us just as a test case, how much could you make for me in the next few weeks if you could tell me, if I could tell you certain things that would happen in games, it would be very little indeed. As Nigel said last night on one of the programmes, the bookmakers are very sophisticated. We're very sophisticated. You have to have a bank card to open up an account with our online betting the way that we take bets. Obviously, that means that you've got to provide a name and address that's linked to that card for the money to actually deposit into the site. And from then on, we obviously know a lot about our clients, and we can trace the bets that are successful. We can trace the bets that are unsuccessful, even for the 99.99% of genuine customers that are on our site. It's still interesting for us to look into an account and say, this person's particularly good at backing these type of horses and when they win, or, you know, just little things like that. So the insight into customers is at its highest level it's ever been. So to actually be able to fix these, any market, especially the spot fixing that's been suggested, is absolutely ludicrous.
But there's no money in it now, is it? No one can make any money. I mean, this is not a criticism of Blue Square, you know. But I'm just asking you a question. If someone wanted to go on to the first corner market in a game tonight, or a game at the start of the Premier League, what would be your maximum bet they can allow? That, you know, account that's just a brand new account, and this will be just not Blue Square. This will be an industry figure. It's not going to be a lot, is it, mate?
No. A journalist phoned me yesterday because they'd seen the story in the Sun. And he just wanted to sense check some of it with me just to see if his paper should be doing it. I won't name the paper. But I said, listen to me. I said, if you wanted to do something like this, the first thing that you would do is have to open up an account. We went through the theoretical process that Lundekvam has actually suggested. So they're saying that they've got a kit man or someone linked at the club to go and do it. Now, if this was online, the guy would have to open an online account. So first up, he's surrendering his name and address. Second of all, the market that you've just said, Nigel, he'd get £100 maximum. If it was a two-way market between two clubs taking the first throw, 5 to 6 each of two. If we're being generous, maybe 10 to 11 each of two. You'd get £110 to probably win 100. So therefore, you're getting £100 on. Okay? The first time, if that's his only bet, he would get flagged up in the new accounts report the following day. Every new account, win or lose, would get flagged up in that. It would show that he's had one successful bet on a corners market. He would then have his account marked to say that he's had his first bet on a corners market and was successful. The second time he tried to get on that market, he'd probably only get half of what he first asked for, just putting it down to fluke, but obviously protecting ourselves. He'd probably get £55 to win 50. The third time that he's successful, he would come back, he would get no more than £10, as you know. And if he was doing it in a shop, I find it even harder to believe, because I don't believe that any of the shops were offering that kind of market.
Alan, do you think it's a bigger problem for football, essentially, rather than UK betting, because we look at those games in Albania sometimes, and obviously these days the likes of yourself and all the online firms, they offer betting opportunities on a wide range of leagues, world leagues. Do you think it's more of an issue, you know, on site almost, in situ, it's in those countries with bookmakers from that particular country rather than UK games and UK firms?
I mean, you could probably say that. I don't have a widespread knowledge of how bookmakers operate in these countries. But if we go back to the cricket scandal, I think people were very quick to say the spot fixing that was alleged and was actually proven in that case, where they managed to get a no ball to be bowled in a certain over. I mean, bookmakers in any country have to be clued up, and to say that an Indian bookmaker was there saying, right, okay, you can bet with me that there'll be a no ball in any ball you want, and people were going up successfully getting large amounts of money on.
Doesn't happen.
I mean, bookmakers are not stupid. Bookmakers are not stupid in any country, let alone there. So, I mean, even if you are an Albanian bookmaker, as soon as you see something dodgy, you're going to do exactly the same as an English bookmaker. And if you're not regulated, you're probably going to do even worse.
Alan, thanks for joining us on the Punter. I mean, you know, we're singing from the same hymn sheet here, aren't we, Nigel? I mean, and the spot fixing thing with the cricket and the Indian bookmaker, to me, it's almost an urban myth. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's been hyped up so much in this country.
I think what it was it's like foiling a terrorist attack with what happened in the cricket thing. You knew what was going to eventually happen, and you stopped it in its tracks. It was to show those guys, we've got these guys on the pocket, and we can do bigger and better things. And that no one made money, and that was the issue there. On this, I think it's something that I mean, everybody has a view on these corners, but it was for years I've been saying they got away with it once. Sporting has lost their money one game, and if you were going to do a coup on the time of the first throw-in, wouldn't you do the opposite way? Wouldn't you keep the ball on the pitch for longer?
Yeah,
and get more and more profit rather than boot it out after 1 minute and a small. You'd keep it on for 10 minutes. If everyone was involved, you could make 50 grand, 100 grand. If you just said,
rather than just a couple of hundred
quid. Keep it on for longer.
Nigel, we're going to leave it there. The match fixing and spot fixing will go on for a long, long time, I'm sure. For us, that's it for now. When we come back, we're going to be talking proper football betting and focusing on the Premier League. Don't go away. Welcome back to the Punter on Sports Tonight. Time to talk Premier League, the English top flight. Fascinating as ever. Nigel with me in the studio. Manchester City, of course, are the favourites. I guess they have to be. They've got the best squad. They only just won the title last year, but I think the general consensus is that they should have won it by a few more points, shouldn't they? Or do you think that Manchester United should have held on? Or
no, I think they should have won it wrapped up with about 6 or 7 games to go, Dan. I think they were the team. I think the thing is about really is how they start. Obviously, it's a huge thing, and it's interesting to see that Mancini's already been backed into 6-4 favourite to lose his job, for the first manager favourite to lose his job. I suppose the pressure's on him. You know, he's won the league now. They've got to defend it, and he's got to do well in Europe. So, and also you've got to look at the Man City now and think to yourself, what is their objectives? They've won the Premier League title. Are they like Chelsea? Are they obsessed by going for everything for the Champions League and showing last year was just a blip? So really, I'm not so sure whether they are as short as they are. I think they're certainty to do well. I think they'll do exceptionally well. But actually go on and win it, I don't know, because I think all these big guys are still flexing their muscles and seeing. I think the key thing here for me, the whole of this shake-up, is where Robin van Persie ends up. I think it's very key, because I think he could maybe heading towards Man City's rivals. Let's
take a look at the odds, because Manchester City are indeed the favourites to win the title, 13-10. Manchester United 13-5, Chelsea 5-1, Arsenal 12, Spurs 33, Liverpool 40s. We were talking off air about the team news and players, and if you think that Robin van Persie is key here, then obviously if he does leave Arsenal, let's face it, he's going to leave Arsenal, isn't he? Then I presume Arsenal are going to get shorter. Whoever he goes to, if it's a Premier League side, are going to get shorter. Is that fair? Is that what we're saying?
Well, it's definitely fair. I mean, I think Manchester City, now that they've got rid of Adebayor, it's permanently gone. They're looking for a forward. They want to strengthen. They're obviously favourite, but everything I'm hearing is that basically Man City aren't as short price as they actually should be. And Manchester United, the interesting one. One bookmaker's got them 6-1 to go. Other bookmaker's got them 2-1 to go to Manchester United. I just think that I think where he ends up, if he goes to Manchester United more so, I think the Manchester United are a big player. I don't think it really makes so much of a difference.
Do you think he'll go to United, though?
I don't really know. I mean, I'm only hearing what I have no idea. I mean, I don't understand why he wouldn't stay at Arsenal personally. I mean, he's the best player there. He's the club captain. He'll go to Manchester United. But I think out of the two clubs, if I was a player and the way they are, I think I'll go to Man United because I think you would play every game. You'll be pivotal in what's going on. I think him and Rooney would form a fantastic partnership up front. They're so different. His pace where Rooney holds it. And at Man City, you could play a lot of the egos, and he could be gone again in a year. So I'm looking at the prices. I just think Man United need a centre midfield player and a centre forward. If they can get those two players, I think they're serious runners. I think the names of Wesley Sneijder and Robin van Persie could make them real contenders this year.
Top six, well, Manchester United and Manchester City 1 to 100, Chelsea 1 to 50, Arsenal 1 to 16. We get further down the list, and who are we looking at to break into the top six or stay in the top six? Liverpool 2 to 5, Newcastle 7 to 2.
I don't fancy Liverpool at all this season. I think Brendan Rodgers is a Jim will fix it. I really do. I think getting that job. I think it's a job far too early for him in his career. I think Swansea got the better deal. I think Naldrip's a much better coach than Brendan Rodgers. I mean, that's he's proven in La Liga. Quality. Brendan Rodgers has done well at lower level, but this is far too job. I can see that all imploding there. And the players he's linked with, bringing them from Swansea to Liverpool, well, they're in trouble. We can't management with Carroll. I really think the Liverpool in trouble here. 2 to 5, I'd back 5.
Well, I'm going to say we've got 7 teams listed there, so is one of those sides the odd one out, or are we looking elsewhere for someone to break into the top six?
I watched them a lot last season, and I think if they can keep Dembele and they complete Dempsey, I think Fulham could be one team could do really well this season. I think on the
top six. Maybe
they
just
finished
beyond
7th or 8th. What was it, 8th last season? They finished 7th before, and they only really put a big run towards the end of the season. At the beginning of the season, they were bottom 3 for about the first 2 months. They were in big disarray. Towards the end of the season, they were playing some beautiful football, and I think in Dembele, they have a proper player there. And I could see them at a big price getting into the top 6. I don't fancy Newcastle.
I was going to say, because people will look at that and think, well, the discrepancy there is Newcastle. They did finish in the top 6 last year. They are 7 to do so again. But do you think, to a certain extent, it's going to be second season syndrome with Alan Alger, and teams are going to have worked them out a little bit, maybe as they did towards the back end of last season?
Well, they worked Demba Ba out, and it wasn't more to set up with Cisse coming in. They worked Demba Ba out, and I think they'll work Cisse out. I don't think those two will be as formidable as they were towards the end of the season. And I think another team who aren't in there as well, I think they'll do well. Martin O'Neill, Sunderland. I think Sunderland will do well. He's got his first season, his players, he's been linking with very similar Martin O'Neill players who've done a job, wingers. He's got pace. He's got McLean who's going to come on this season and be a revelation, I think. I think they will beat Sunderland in a match bet. If someone offered me Sunderland to beat Newcastle, I'll be all over Sunderland. You saw what he did when he got there, and their second half of the form, flipped towards the end. But that sort of first 10-15 was championship material. But they're, I think they could be the two teams that could break through, Fulham and Sunderland for me.
Let's take a look at the other end of the table, or potentially who might be at the other end of the table in the relegation market, because of course the promoted clubs last season all stayed up, and immediately we looked to the teams that came up from the Championship, and we presume that they're going to struggle. The bookmakers always price them up, or nearly always price them up, as the favourites to go straight back down. They did so with Norwich, they did so, of course, with Swansea, and lo and behold, you can see that Reading and Southampton, who came up last season 5 to 4 and 13 to 10. West Ham, I don't know if it's a London thing. I don't think it's because odds compilers are West Ham fans. Let's face it, most of the press boxes these days up and down the country are West Ham fans. They are 23 to 10. I mean, which ones stick out for you there as the wrong prices or the right prices?
Well, the first thing that sticks out for me is that usually to start a Premier League campaign, there's always a team that are big odds on to go down 1 to 3, 1 to 4, 1 to 5. This is probably the most competitive Premier League we've seen. By 5 to 4, the favourites to go down. That is, everyone is odds on to stay up. Bookmakers really don't know. The two that I think here jump off the page, I think West Brom at 92. Yeah. I think without Roy Hodgson, the players they've got a good team there. They've got a good nucleus of good side, but it's a very, very big job for Steve Clarke to go in there and do a similar job they did. And the other one, I think Norwich will struggle this year without Paul Lambert. I think they played very, very well. I think their squad last season was tight. And if they get off to a bad start, I can see Grant Holt jumping ship. And if he goes, I think Norwich would be my pick. I think Southampton have the base and the fan base and the stadium and the money. They've got money as well. I think
so Reading.
Yeah, I think, and Reading have also got money. They've been linked with Jermaine Defoe today. They've got Pobreniak from Fulham, who I think will be a good buy for them. So for me, Norwich and West Brom, and I would possibly have a sneaky little bet on West Ham. I think I don't think there's much between Reading and Southampton, but because like you say, they are the popular team. They are, everyone sort of people were second favourite side in West Ham a little bit, and I think that could be a bit too bad
Just
well.
briefly on a spread bet more than anything else, we've seen promoted teams jump out the Championship, go into the Premier League, do very well for the first 6-8 games, and then dive down. If you were one to maybe buy Premier League points for a side that just went up, which one catches your eye?
Well, I think the two there, Reading and Southampton. But usually they're pitched
you get
around...
one, don't you, that sort of kicks on straight away?
They're usually pitched around about 32, 33. This season they'll be higher. Because it's odds on that there's no clear-cut favourite. I think you'll probably have to pay about 37. I think the lower team points will be around 37, 38 and a half, which is very, very high to pay. You can never be wrong on those Premier League points, though. I mean, the deviation of them is always about 2 or 3. They look great buys, but there's never really much deviation on them, so be very careful.
We've talked about West Ham. They are in the market for top London club. Chelsea are the favourites, set to 8-2 at 11, with Arsenal 9-4, Spurs 4-1, Fulham 66 QPR, and West Ham both 500-1 shots. I mean, are Chelsea good things? I mean, for me, Roberto Di Matteo, surely he can't get away playing the same type of football in this forthcoming season that he did towards the back end of last year. They're, for me, a false favourites.
Well, I wouldn't back them. I don't think there's no value in them whatsoever. I think Chelsea flattered. I think they're probably the worst. Even some of the ardent Chelsea fans say one of the worst footballing sides to be crowned champions of Europe. He did a good job, and he said, but I think he's out of his depth as well. And I could see changes at Chelsea in 6 or 7 or 8 weeks, maybe, like they did last season. Arsenal, Roberto, I think he's got finally spending some money. Whether they suddenly become Arsenal players straight away, there's a big, 3 or 4 players going to go straight into the starting line at the beginning. Everyone's gone about AVB as a bad choice, and I've always said it, footballing, I think he's a great choice. And the way he's dealt with the media and the way he's turned the Spurs fans over in a very short period of time. And if he gets rid of Modric for good money and he buys Moutinho in for I think that's fantastic business. I think he was one of the stars of the Euros.
It's a little bit of a shot to nothing selling Modric, though, in lots of ways, because he's not expected to keep him, is he, Villas-Boas? He's not the man who brought him in, he's not the man who's managed him. And if he goes, no Spurs fan, he's going to blame the current manager.
And they're going to bring in the players he wants to work with. It's his team, he's Portuguese, he's bringing a Portuguese player who'll play a system that he's used to, he's played with under him before. I think Tottenham will do well. I really do think they'll do well. I know it's the first way to the poorhouse to sit here every year and say, oh, Tottenham will do well, but I think they're under no pressure here. And I think the players will play for him. I think they'll believe in him. He's young. I don't think he's going to have the problems he had at Chelsea. And it's a silly bet here, but I tell you what, Fulham at 66-1, they're not going to be the top London side, but they could prove the shock, I think, this season. Really could.
Yeah, speaking of silly bets, Mario Balotelli, of course, is hitting the headlines at the moment because his girlfriend, or ex-girlfriend, I'm not quite so sure, is pregnant, and there is a market to have a look at, which is what is the name of the new baby going to be? Yeah,
well, I mean, I've got no inside information on this, I'm afraid. I
hope not.
Well, I mean, if there's anybody trying to get Mario Balotelli's missus might be on the phone to someone to get them to get a few bets on this. Would that be match fixing?
Well, that's it, exactly. Hang on. Yeah, this is spot fixing. This is baby name fixing.
I mean, Mario, the favourite, obviously 2-1, but I wouldn't have a particular view on there. There's no Nigel on this. I saw Angel. I thought it said Nigel for a quick second there. Nigel's not on this, but I mean,
surely because I think he's suggesting that it might not be his, and I think there's a paternity test. I don't understand the full details of this, but if that's the case, it's going to be Mario. Surely.
Well, I think if I was going to have a little speculative little bet on this, I'd back, if it was a boy, I'd back it be Luigi, because it'd be Mario and Luigi from the Super Mario games.
I like it. I like it.
And he's probably old enough to still be playing them as well. So Luigi for me at a big price.
Yeah, bit of fun with that one. There's certain to be more special bets between now and the start of the season. Premier League kicking off, of course, in the next few weeks, as is the Championships, and we'll be delving into the second tier of English football after the break. Welcome back to the Punter on Sports Tonight. Time to take a look at the Championship betting, second tier of English football. Always one of the tougher divisions, Nigel, I feel, that punters have got to deal with, because we've got teams, obviously, that have dropped down for the Premier League. Everyone expects them to go straight back up. It doesn't always happen. The bookmakers always price them up relatively shortly. But in recent seasons, we've seen teams from League One jump up not just to the Championship, but then again to the Premier League. Difficult one, I feel, for punters.
It is. I think it's the hardest league not just in England, I think it's one of the hardest leagues in the world to sort of look at. It's not one of these leagues where money really talks. I mean, you can buy your way out of League Two, you can buy your way out of League One sometimes, but the Championship, the teams with the biggest money don't really sometimes do it. I mean, you look from history in the past, they haven't really done it that much. And it's getting harder and harder and harder. And obviously, the teams that come down, obviously got the parachute payments, they can survive, but it's so important to get back. And it hasn't been a profitable system over the years, certainly last few years, to back teams that have gone down. But I think it might change this year. I've got a big, strong fancy this one. Even though it's competitive, this is my strongest fancy.
But you see, you've just said, how many times have we...
I know, but
we could have sat here for so many summers thinking, I fancy Charlton to bounce straight back up. I fancy whoever to bounce straight back up. But... it doesn't always happen.
I know it doesn't, but I really, really do, because I think on this market we've got a false favourite, and I think there's value to be had elsewhere.
Let's take a look at the odds, because Leicester are the favourites, and I guess this is the team that you believe are the false favourites. 15-2 top price. Bolton 8-1, Wolves 9-1, Blackburn 12-1. Well, the last three named there obviously have been relegated from the Premier League last season. Leicester were back last season, didn't go up.
Yeah, they were backed heavily, and there's a bit of money coming in from at the moment, but they're not buying the calibre of player that you want to be out there. They're buying, guys, goal scorers from Fleetwood, from the conference, who's done exceptionally well. Was it Varney?
Yeah, Jamie Vardy they've signed.
Yeah, but coming out this level, that's not the kind of player you want. And Bolton, for me, 8-1 each way, I think they're an absolute knocking bet. They've got the players who know how to get out of this division. They've got a manager who I think is the best manager, bar none, in this division. I think Owen Coyle, he was linked with the Liverpool job, 6 months ago, 8 months ago, and now he's managing the team in the Championship. I think the manager is so important here. I think if you know the system of that league and you get them out, if you look at Neil Warnock, you look at Sam Allardyce, they're kind of managers, and I think Owen Coyle knows exactly what to do here. We've got Wolves, who've got a complete unknown manager. I don't know anything about it. He doesn't know when he gets to go to Barnsley in a Wednesday night. What's he doing here? But I can't have Blackburn.
They've made some interesting signings, haven't they? I mean, Danny Murphy has agreed to go there. I don't know about Nuno Gomez. He might be going there for a bit of a pay packet, but they made one or two interesting signings.
Danny Murphy, you could tell then towards the end of last season, didn't have the legs. He's not going to have the legs for this league. This league is so physical and strong. I can see Danny Murphy's a good player when you give him time on the ball, but here, they're going to be he's not going to play. Maybe he's not the player he was 3 or 4 years ago. Leeds, we obviously know what to do, but I just think Bolton are a great each way. But obviously today, all the money has come for Forest. We've got these Kuwaitis coming.
They're 9-2 just to be promoted.
Well, they're around 8-1 with some, but they still win it.
From about 25, 28 a couple of days ago.
A ridiculous amount of gamble. And I said to before, the money doesn't really talk here. I mean, they're not being linked with players that you could buy out this. You look at money. You got Watford here. Watford have bought a manager in Gianfranco Zola, and Watford finished higher than Forest last season, and they're considered like 33-1, 40-1 rags. I think Forest are just ridiculous price. They're going to get. I wouldn't be surprised though to see Forest buying one sort of half decent ex-Premier League player or somebody of a big name, and they'll go clear favourites, and it's wrong.
And we were looking at the promotion odds there. Obviously, they mirror the outright odds, but they're a lot shorter because of 3 places up for grabs. Leicester 2s, Wolves 11-4, Bolton 11-4, Cardiff 4, Leeds 9-2, Blackburn 9-2, Forest 9-2. As you say, Leeds and Forest potentially rather false prices there. I mean, further down the list, I guess you're looking at the likes of Sheffield Wednesday, I quite fancy to go well. But we've seen teams in the past, the likes of Swansea, the likes of Norwich, jump straight from the Championship into the Premier League, and I guess it's all about starting well, like Southampton did, like Brighton did, even though they didn't go up. But you feel that they might have a chance then.
They're not in the betting. I mean, if someone said to me now, I could have a decent match bet Brighton, I'd take Brighton at big odds to beat Forest. I'd take Blackburn at each of 2 to beat Forest. I mean, this Forest side is poor. They're a very, very poor team. They've still got money. They've still got to spend it wisely. They've got to put a decent manager in, and he's got to go out and attract the players to come and play for them. I mean, they're a long, long way off from being 8-1 shots. Ridiculous.
A bookmaker's almost duty bound just to price them up short, because people will read the story in the newspaper or on the internet and they'll think, hang on a minute, I'll have a bet on Forest, I'll have a bet on Watford, so let's just shorten them up anyway without even taking any serious.
Well, it's a bit of a guessing game. They'll put them in at 14 to 1, think no one's going to back them. Then the first 100 quid comes in and go, actually, we got this wrong, it should be 12 to 1. The out 100 quid, it should be 10 to 1 until you hit a price where no one calls. And the price is no one calls because there's no value on them. So the price now is at the floor. Unless they start buying people of a calibre to get out of this league, it's a tall ask for them. I mean, for me, I think Bolton are a great bet. I think Sheffield Wednesday, like you say, will go well. I don't think they're going to go up, but I think they'll be in maybe a playoff position. I think it's the best they can hope for. I think Watford, I think Gianfranco Zola will turn them into a decent side, and they had a brilliant season last year. I think they'll go close. And if you look at the comparison, Watford with their money, Udinese 33 to 1, Nottingham Forest with their money finishing just off the relegation, 8-1 second favourite. Some bookmakers, crazy.
Let's take a look at the relegation odds because you mentioned Barnsley, and Barnsley towards the bottom of the list when it comes to teams to go down. As you can see, Barnsley 13 to 8 at the top of the list, I should say. 13 to 8 Barnsley, Peterborough 2s, Bristol City just avoided it, 100 to 30. Crystal Palace, Millwall 7 to 2. Millwall sort of kicked on just after Christmas to get themselves out of a little bit of trouble there. Barnsley have signed 1 or 2 players. I mean, Mido's come to Bar. I just don't really understand that move. That's all. You're talking about players who don't really fancy it on a wet Wednesday night at Oakwell. Well, Mido's top of my list, really, you know. Who do you think might go down?
Well, I mean, I'm always surprised to see Crystal Palace at low prices. I think Bristol City will do well. I think Palace are a good young side. I think potentially they've got, I think got 3 or 4 players on the fringe of the Olympics.
Absolutely.
They're a good side. Derby have got the turnout, the stadia. For me, it's all about Peterborough, which are reasons I'll come on to in a minute. But I think Peterborough could find themselves in deep trouble. I think they could find themselves out without a manager, and I think they can find themselves losing a lot of their key players to bigger clubs. And I think Peterborough at 2 to 1, there is no doubt in my mind, 100% that Peterborough will start off favourites to go down this market. You look at how they're shipping goals as well. They leak goals like nobody's business, and you cannot leak 3 or 4 goals and expect to score 5 every time. And I think they're a selling club, and they've got rid of their best centre half. They got rid of their goal scorer last year, and they may get rid of some other key players, and I think they're in trouble.
And as you alluded to, they might not get rid, but they might lose someone else. They're 2 to 1 to go down, and they could lose their manager. Is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah, I mean, obviously today Forest have got rid of Steve Cottrell with immediate effect. They're looking for the manager market. When the manager market come up early today, you went at some bookmakers about 6 to 1.
This is for next Notts
Forest.
Forest.
This is next Notts Forest manager. 6 to 1, Darren Ferguson. He was the name linked. There was calls going in all day, people trying to back him, people ringing me up and telling me this. He's moving. He got backed into big odds on at one stage, 1 to 2, 1 to 3. The price was coming down. What I'm understanding is that basically he's the main target, but there's a big compensation deal to be done here, and it's whether they can find the compensation deal. Obviously, Harry Redknapp's name is up there, but Darren Ferguson is the #1 target. Now, for me, if that is the case, that makes them Forest no value at 8 to 1 to ever. I mean, Darren Ferguson's a good young coach, but with the expectation and the money, he hasn't really proven it when he's gone to bigger clubs and with less Peterborough before. And I think these Kuwaitis obviously said they want Ferguson. They got the wrong bloke. That's the only thing I could think of. I can't understand why they want him. And why would you be a Kuwaiti businessman and come down and say, I'm going to buy a football club, going to take him, but get me Darren Ferguson? It doesn't make sense. But the betting says yes, he's going to be a favourite. 15 to 8 won't be there. If you do think this is the case, that 15 to 8 won't last long. Obviously, Harry's in at 11 to 4, but then you've got the.
I mean, Harry's been backed again today. He seems to get backed for every single job that he's put up for, doesn't he? Really, Harry Redknapp. I mean, Ferguson 15 to 8, Redknapp 11 to 4, Roy Keane 3 to 1, Mick McCarthy 8, Stuart Pearce 8 to 1, McLeish 9, and Diego Maradona at 16 to 1. I think he's just been sacked from the club he was out in Saudi, hasn't he? The interesting thing about these managers' markets, the market is either dead right straight away.
Yeah, it's either 101 or it's either 100 to 1 on or 100 to 1 against.
Or things can go wrong, and you'll see 3 or 4 names sort of go short price, go odds on over the course of about 3 or 4 weeks.
Well, what happens with it is you always get one target that comes out that is the main target. Then they have to agree personal terms. They might not agree personal terms, or on this occasion, they might not agree compensation packages. There is no doubt that Darren Ferguson is the #1 target for Nottingham Forest. Whether they can cross all the I's and dot the T's or get it done, then basically that's the question. But I mean, Harry Redknapp 11 to 4, I wouldn't back him. You know, there hasn't been any. There hasn't been any calls from Rosie the cat to get on, and there hasn't been anything they had on there. So I mean, I wouldn't be back into Harry Redknapp. I think that Darren Ferguson is definitely the man. And if I was looking for an alternative, someone to get you out of the league, might not play the football you want to do, but Mick McCarthy would be my
get you there, wouldn't he? I mean, just on managers' markets, because they're always interesting. Punters love them. There's no doubt about that. It's interesting that you say managers go 101. I think David Moyes went short. They might have been suspended for Spurs. You've got Roberto Martinez going ridiculously short price for Liverpool. If you are close to, or you have got contact with somebody who knows the manager, there is every opportunity, every chance that manager will have been asked about the job. He tells his brother, he tells his pal. They will have the right information, but it still might not come to fruition. Things might not work out. I mean, it's frustrating sometimes because you think you've got the right information, you think you've got it plotted up, but you don't.
Well, there's two stories. I mean, one of them very quickly. One of them was I remember that Stephen Gerrard being 101 to go to Chelsea. He was driving down to Chelsea, about to sign the deal. Everyone said Gerrard's left Anfield. He's driving down, and he turned back, and said, "I can't do this. I want to go back." And he went back. He was bet for hundreds of thousands of pounds to go. Obviously, the famous one was Harry Redknapp when he went to Portsmouth
Yeah.
before. But and the one and I remember Alan Alger went to West Ham, and a friend of mine asked. He lived next door to Alan Alger's brother, and he said, "You've got a fax machine before internet. Can we use your fax machine? Because Alan just needs a fax note to accept the job at West Ham." And unfortunately, my phone was turned off. Always the way. Always the way.
I mean, is this a market that punters should get involved in seriously or not? Because surely it's open to getting your fingers burnt.
As a bookmaker,
you don't know. As a bookmaker,
it's a fantastic market because you keep it in 10, 20, 30 pounds. It's a fun market, and you have a few quid on. And what happens is you have 6 or 7 different favourites. So every time you hit a favourite, if you're on the betting exchanges, you can become the bookmaker and lay that person.
So you'd rather be a layer than a player.
You definitely want to be a layer on this market. It's no all day long.
But just on the Forest situation, there's 2 bets we can get here. One is Ferguson to get the job at Forest and Peterborough to go down, is what we say.
I think that's a great call. I think if he goes, I think he'll take 2 or 3 of his key players to Forest with him. I think he'll and the way they leak goals, I think they're in trouble with him. I think they're in big trouble without him.
Nigel, many thanks for now. That's the end of part 3. Still to come though, we will be talking boxing on the Punter. Don't go away. Welcome back to the Punter on Sports Tonight. Last part of the show, and we turn again to boxing because there's a massive fight this weekend at Upton Park. It is David Haye against Derek Del Boy Chisora. Nigel, first of all, because I've not spoken to you about this, what do you make of this fight actually going ahead? Because it's a controversial fight in many ways, isn't it?
Well, I think it's a fight that the British public want to see for all the wrong reasons, and I don't think, personally, as a boxing fan and a purist of the sport, I don't think we should be watching it. But at the end of the day, I think it's a meaningless fight because I think both fighters are at the end of their career, and I don't think a fight, whoever wins it, I think it's going to be it won't propel them into a world title shot. Maybe Haye, but the Klitschko's going to fight, and they've let themselves down as guys at the press conferences, and why should they? Why should they get an opportunity to fight? I think there's young up-and-coming boxers. I think Tyson Fury's doing his bit. I think David Price is doing his bit in the British scene. Why not give them a chance? Why turn the attention on this? It's just, for me, it's what we want, and I think they'll be betting on it. I think it'll be a huge TV figures on it watching it, but it doesn't make any difference if we wins it because I don't think any of them are going anywhere.
This is a betting show, though, and you mentioned that there are other fighters. There's one other fighter fighting this weekend, Amir Khan, of course. We're not going to delve into that particular fight on this edition of the show. But in terms of betting turnover, not just because of the timing of it, because it's Saturday evening for the Haye Chisora fight and Amir Khan's in the early hours, but even if they were head-to-head, I mean, which one would take more money for you?
Well, I think boxing, I've said this before on the show, boxing is a sport that's in the doldrums in betting. I mean, other sports like motor racing, rugby league, rugby league will be on the Friday night, there's boxing on the Friday night, you're 10 times more in rugby league than you would on the boxing. Boxing, if it's a Saturday night fight and there was X Factor on, you'll take 5 times more money on the person to be eliminated from X Factor than the boxing fight, and that's the way it's come. It's just become a sport. In the glory days of the early 90s with Eubank, Watson, Ben, they're gone, and this fight will take a few quid, but the serious punter will leave it right to the last minute. I think the small, the 10 or the 20, 30 pound, the guys watch, the people who watch the show, they'll have their fivers and they'll pick a round. But as far as betting the turnover, it's nowhere near a sport as what it has been boxing. Let's
take a look at the outright odds, so to speak, because David Haye has been backed over the course of the week. When I looked at these prices on Monday, Haye was generally a sort of 2 to 5 shot. 4 to 11, 3's on in places. I think the boxing punting public have decided that Haye potentially is more skillful, potentially has probably just got a better boxing brain than Chisora, who's 11 to 4 in the draw at 33 to 1. I mean, it surprises me a little bit because when I've seen the two fight, Haye seems to be relatively negative and his jab and move, and Chisora's a little bit more aggressive, and maybe that catches the eye, and that's what I'm interested in a fighter. But do those odds look about right to you? Are you surprised that Haye has been back?
The Haye fights in the last 2 fights have been very poor, but he hasn't fought for a long time. Last time he fought was quite a while ago. I wouldn't be backing him at 4 to 11. I certainly wouldn't back it. I think it's a fight. I think the prices are absolutely spot on. One thing it won't be is a draw. I like backing draws in boxing.
It used to be a draw, didn't we? 20 years ago. I remember when the draw used to be was 33, so it was cut to 25, cut to 2016. There's about 3 or 4 high-profile draws over the course of a year, and again, we're probably going back to when Ben and Eubank drew Old Trafford.
I mean, a lot of those draw prices now, though, the first 3 or 4 rounds of 5 rounds are quite cagey. You can always get out of a profit because the draw gets halved in price as the fight goes on. But on this occasion, I just can't see it going a distance. I know a couple of guys who know a little bit more boxing about me thinks it potentially can, and Hay will win it. But I think there's too much. I think Chisora is just going to go in there like a street baller, and I think it'll play into the hands of Hay. I think Hay will pick him off with his jab. One thing I was surprised about, I mean, Hay's 3 years older than Chisora, which I've never thought that. You would by looking at it, you would have thought Chisora was the older man. But the thing is, it's just a fight that I just can't see any real big cash going on. I think it all depends. Boxing results and sporting results on a Saturday night all determine about how the results on the sport on that day go. So if the favourite wins the big race, suddenly someone's got a few quid in his hand and they'll go, give me $5,000 on Hay. If all the favours get turned over and someone's done his money, no one's going. But it all depends on how the day has panned out for punters. Because what they do is they move from one thing to the other thing to the other thing to the other thing, and it all depends on how much they got in their account.
Let's take a look at the method of victory. We've got odds for you for this, and once again, Hay by knockout or technical knockout 5-1, Hay by decision 2-1, Chisora by knockout or technical knockout 7s, Chisora by decision at 7-1, the draw 33 as we've mentioned. I mean, there's been some wild fights involving Chisora. I was reading the other day that he's bitten an opponent, he's kissed an opponent. You never know quite what you're going to get. I mean, you feel that if Chisora is going to win it, maybe he's going to have to knock David Hay out, but Hay could well be just too elusive, and maybe Hay by decision at 2-1. I must admit, I've got no real opinion on this one.
I personally think that the difference between the Hay by decision and the Hay by KO is too big. We know Chisora hasn't been knocked out. He's lost 3 fights, never been knocked out. But I know he went in with Klitschko, but apart from that fight, I think Hay's a different kettle of fish, and I think that the tension and the much they want to do, they really want to go in and do a job on each other. And I think Chisora will go in too mad in the first 3 or 4 rounds and leave himself open. And I can't see the fight going a distance. I think Hay will knock him out. I really do. I think 5-1 Hay knockout would certainly be where I put my money on. What they're saying here is the longer the fight goes on, the more chance Hay will win. But Chisora's got a puncher's chance in the first 2 or 3 rounds. But he's been in with bigger guys than Chisora. People say he's a bumped up cruiserweight, with Valiev. He's gone in with big Klitschko. We didn't see him perform against him. He was scared against Vladimir Klitschko. But I think he'll do a job here tonight.
Let's take a look at the round-by-round prices, because obviously it's a 10-round fight now as well. It was 12, but now we're down to 10. So the odds have slightly changed today because of that announcement. I don't know why it's gone down to 10. Maybe they didn't feel it was going to last 12. I don't know. But either on points, as we know, 10 to 11. I mean, if you think it's going to go the distance, and 10 rather than 12 would certainly turn you onto that. 10 to 11 doesn't matter which fighter wins. Either in the first 3, either in the first 5. I mean, the way that they're talking, it's not going to be a fight that's going to last long. I mean, anything that catches
if
the eye
you look at them, I mean, you have to specifically make the round. You either 1 to 3, 1 to 5, you get 3 to 2 about a Hay win. I just much prefer Hay to knock him out 5-1. I really do. You don't have to specifically pick a round, because the worst thing you can do is have a bet, get to the 6th round and go, I'll go to bed now, I'm not bothered about it. At least you've got once you've got the whole fight to enjoy, and hopefully that the guy puts him on the deck. But I just, that would be my thing. I'll just go straight in for a Hay win. Instead of back in the 4 to 11, instead of back in the specific round, I'm just going to go in for Hay to knock him out of 5s. I mean, Chisora here on points 13 to 2. I just don't think he can win it on points. I think his only option is to knock Hay out. And I'm a layer of the fight to go to points. So basically, what I'm saying is I think that 11 to 10, the fight to have a knockout, instead of 10 to 11, the fight going to points is a bet for me.
He's a character, isn't he, Chisora? There's no doubt about that, as we can see here. This is an interesting pose from Delbert. I mean, I don't know why he wears this. Well, certainly don't know why he wears the Paddy Power shorts, unless he's getting paid a decent amount for it.
Yeah, I think he'll be wearing. I think they'll be wearing them in the ring, green ones in the ring. But I tell you what, I don't think them pants are going to help him. I'm still on the 5s. I hope he's got Paddy Power sponsoring the soles of his feet when we're looking at him lying on the deck on Saturday night.
Yeah, he might.
I don't know what the guy on the right's measuring. What's he measuring with his hands? He's having a good look at something. I don't know what
he might have the Paddy Power underpants on, but as you say, the soles of his feet, he might be a blue square or a sporting bet. You don't know, do you?
Really? No idea. But it seems quite intriguing. I mean, These paddy pounds. I hope you won't get fined by that like
Nicholas Bender
did. But there you go. But I was given a pair of those by a paddy pound. I wore them on the show, and I've worn them for I haven't worn the pants for a month, but I've had them on and off, and I haven't had a winning day punting since then day. So mine are burnt. So hopefully Zora gets the same luck from my pants. Wasted time in pants.
Speaking of clothes, let's hope we don't lose our shirts when it comes to the football season. We were talking about it earlier. We may as well give you our ACCAs for the season, and please don't hold us to these. Let's put the ACCAs up on the screen because we've both picked out one. Let's go for yours first of all, Nigel.
Yeah, I mean these are ones of the actual favourites to win.
Yours
Yours up first there. There you go.
Well, I'll talk you through them. I mean, I think Man City, biggie squad. I know the Champions League could be an issue, but I think that City are the best team in the division. They've got the squad. They could well add Robin van Persie. Sheffield Wednesday, I'm taking a bit of a flyer to go up again, 20-1. MK Dons, they signed Alan Smith the other day. They went close. They were top 6, of course, last time. Fleetwood, for me, could do a Crawley, go up and up again. Obviously, Crawley didn't win the league last year, but they still managed to get promoted. And Wrexham, outside of Fleetwood, were by far and away the best side in the conference. So 17 grand for a pound for me. Nigel, yours will hopefully come up on screen. Here we go.
I've gone for a bit more of the safer option rather than your 17 grand, just the 4,039.20.
I need the money more than you, trust me.
But I'll be having it for a tenner, so I'll be 40 grand. But I did say Manchester United with a value. I put Manchester City in here because I thought each way we were looking at, and I thought there was no way they were going to be outside the front three. So Manchester City, I think they're the class team in it. I still think Manchester United might close in there, but Bolton, 15-2, we know the reason I thought Bolton said all the show. Coventry, I think they're potentially a team at Coventry that someone could come in and take over.
If the crowd get behind them at Coventry at the Rico,
and I think got the best stadium there, and I think potentially it could be money invested in there. Bradford, I think they did really, really well last season, and they've got money in there. And Luton, I think Bradford are a lot bigger than 72.
Yeah, Bradford are bigger than 72.
I think they're a lot bigger. Yeah. I think you've got the wrong price. I think it's Rotherham are the favourites in that division at 72. Bradford are at least double price. But Luton, I fancy Luton strongly because my good mate Alan Alger was on here earlier, sponsors of Blue Square, sponsors that league, and he tells me that this year he fancies Luton strong, very strong. And every time he's ever tipped me up anything on the Blue Square, he's always never been far away. So I'm going to go with Adam and Luton.
And just winding back to best bets today, because the stories in the newspapers, as far as we're concerned, Nottingham Forest taken over by a Kuwaiti family who've got lots and lots of money. We think the movement over the next few days, if not sooner, could be Darren Ferguson out of Peterborough and into Forest, and that arguably the story of the day from a betting perspective. I
think that's without doubt the question of that. But the thing is, what I would say to you is, if you are taking the 15-8. Hedge your bets, get out of it when it hits very, very short, because things do happen in that market.
Things can change. Let's hope that they don't. Nigel, many thanks for joining me on the Punter. Many thanks to everyone watching. Hopefully it'll be a profitable day tomorrow when we'll be back. See you then. Nice one, mate. When you look at, say, for example, some of the early Europa League games, some games that are played out in the Balkans, in Eastern Europe, and maybe some lower leagues in those sort of nations, can you see maybe an issue there? I mean, it wouldn't necessarily affect UK bookmakers, UK punters that much, but could you see an issue maybe in that particular part of the world in games such as that?
Possibly, yeah. I take your point. There will be games there, but there's unusual betting patterns. But each game, a bookmaker will know how much they will roughly see on that market. So, for example, if you've got a game like that, you would probably see on the betting exchange and industry as a whole, maybe 15, 20 grand. If you're seeing 15, 20 grand on one team in the first 20 minutes, you know something's up. You cut the price immediately. If you shorten them by dramatically, if the money keeps coming, you know something is really up, then you suspend betting on it. There is nobody out, and then that account is marked. And then what the bookmakers do is they pass on those names to the governing bodies and say, this is what we think is suspicious patterns on this game. That wasn't the case in 1990s in these games, but those games you never bet on. This is a global market now, betting. The UK bookmakers don't just talk about the English market. It's massive in Europe. So they have to open up every single thing. So it's very competitive. You have to offer every prices on every single event. But what these people are severely lacking, how much intelligence and how much knowledge of their clients bookmakers have in this one. They know exactly who's betting what.
Speaking of bookmakers, let's hear from Alan Alger of Blue Square. Alan, I mean, you must see, as Nigel is explaining, certain bets, certain accounts, certain games, and obviously you change. Welcome along to the Punter on Sports Tonight, the show that likes to bring you all the value across the sporting markets. On tonight's show, we'll be taking a look forward to that thorny issue of match fixing in football. Plus, we'll be taking a look at the Premier League market, the Championship market, and of course, tackling the big boxing bouts this weekend. I'm pleased to say that Nigel Seeley is alongside me in the studio. Nigel, how's your week been so far?
Yeah, not too bad, Dan. I mean, apart from the disappointment of the big game of the week, the Porter down against the Macedonian third team, the game I spoke about Monday, under 2.5 goals, and the goalkeeper performing a Superman act to let me lose the money on that. But apart from that, I'm a bit disappointed with the rain. This is what it's doing. I mean, we need some good racing. We had Newmarket today, which is quite a good card tomorrow. We just need a good 3 or 4 days to enjoy some good sport. And I think this is the problem that punters are finding. I just keep going on about it, but the weather's playing havoc, not only with the sporting calendar, but also with my bank balance. And we need to sort it out quick.
No doubt about that. We are going to talk football a little bit later on in the show. We're going to start, though, with match fixing because there isn't too many things going on, as you mentioned. So the newspapers have decided to run 1 or 2 stories, mainly involving a Southampton player from the late 90s, Klaus Lundekvam, talking about games that he says were fixed, or at least parts of games that were fixed. I mean, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, let's be honest with you. There is a certain elements in sport, and certainly in betting where things are up to skullduggery, because when there's money involved, there's certain people who do things that aren't necessarily what you expect them to do. But on this occasion, the figures don't make sense. I mean, they don't make any sense to me. I mean, they're talking about the late 1990s here when this allegedly happened. I worked for a leading online bookmaker, then I worked for a spread betting company in IG Index, and I worked for a fixed odd company in Stan James. Now, both of those 2 companies were at the forefront in offering in-running prices on these novelty markets, throw-ons, corners, etc. Nobody at that time bet on who will get the first throw-on. No one. Not here, not in Asia, nowhere. The market never existed. So whoever laid these bets, I don't know who they were because it wasn't in the English marketplace. The second thing is the corners, where you could bet on how many over and under a corner, or you could bet on who will get the first corner. Now, who will get the first corner will be 5 to 6. You could get 100 quid on it. No more. £200 if you're at a push, if you're a losing account. £600 question marks were being asked why this bloke having £600. And to kick off, it was 5 to 6 each of 2 as well. Again, I remember a Super Bowl game where someone rang up and had £1,200 on one of the teams to kick off first, win the toss at the kick off 3 hours before. They suspended the market because they thought someone knew something about it. There is no way you can get thousands of pounds on this market. Now, even if you get £200 or £300, and you win the first time, okay, down to luck. If you do it the second time, you're restricted to £100. If you do it the third time, your account is closed, you will not get a bet on. And what I think here is, I think it's a journalist doing a very poor job on not knowing
the odds accordingly. How rife or otherwise do you think match fixing is?
I mean, match fixing as a whole, if you're talking about individual events in games, as Nigel says, very, very difficult to actually make money by doing this. I mean, we're industry insiders. I mean, if someone was to say to us just as a test case, how much could you make for me in the next few weeks if you could tell me, if I could tell you certain things that would happen in games, it would be very little indeed. As Nigel said last night on one of the programmes, the bookmakers are very sophisticated. We're very sophisticated. You have to have a bank card to open up an account with our online betting the way that we take bets. Obviously, that means that you've got to provide a name and address that's linked to that card for the money to actually deposit into the site. And from then on, we obviously know a lot about our clients, and we can trace the bets that are successful. We can trace the bets that are unsuccessful, even for the 99.99% of genuine customers that are on our site. It's still interesting for us to look into an account and say, this person's particularly good at backing these type of horses and when they win, or, you know, just little things like that. So the insight into customers is at its highest level it's ever been. So to actually be able to fix these, any market, especially the spot fixing that's been suggested, is absolutely ludicrous.
But there's no money in it now, is it? No one can make any money. I mean, this is not a criticism of Blues facts, not knowing the industry, not knowing effectively what he's writing about, not asking people in the betting industry. It wouldn't happen because he'll give his story away, but not knowing what his limitations are. Now, I'm not to say that there was maybe games where syndicates where they get players to provide team news and benefit from that. That's probably true. I probably think that's the case for that. But on this occasion, the figures just don't stack up. I mean, I tried to make the case for the betting industry two days ago with 2 journalists. I can name 10, 12 journalists who've rung or placed bets on horse and on managers to get the next manager job. Is there anything wrong with that?
I guess it's insider trading, isn't it? And
Well,
if that was the City, then it's frowned upon, isn't it?
But you compare it to horse racing. Every major bookmaker, the big three bookmakers in this country, have ins at yards. They know the horses that aren't progressing, the 2-year-olds which are expected to do well, the 2-year-olds aren't expected to do well. That is what bookmaking is about, forming an opinion and trying to... So do they have a psychological edge? You could look at loads of different things here. But on this occasion, maybe they've done it as a group of lads for a bit of a laugh, one-off. They've probably got £1,000. Once they've divvied it all up between the players, they've got £100 each. Second time, they're thinking, is it worth it? Should it have happened in the first place? No. But you're talking about FIFA getting involved, UEFA getting involved. This is a story run by the biggest newspaper in this country, which is just a false storm, and there's no evidence to it. There's no proof in it. The markets that they quoted didn't exist, and the levels they're talking about are impossible to get on.
Just on a broader theme of match fixing, I mean, I completely agree with you, and people will say, well, we're in the betting industry, this is a betting show, so we're bound to say that. But on a wider theme,